Okay, so the first time that I ever spoke on social media was about 5 years ago, and I wanted to make the presentation as digital world as possible. So I went to pollanywhere.com and I set up all my slides so that people could vote in with their cell phones, only to find out that maybe only 20% of the room knew how to text. So I've learned, flash forward 5 years, I've still learned it's a good idea to poll the audience before we jump into all this. Okay, so you didn't know you were going to be tested. Here you go. All of you online, we're going to assume you got to the online session and you're good. All right, so quick survey of how digital world are you? Do you text? Just mentally, you got 10 fingers, we got 10 questions. Just mentally kind of take your score in your head. Are you on Facebook? Have you ever tweeted or posted a status update today? Do you happen to have a data plan for your phone? Do you pay your bills online? Does your church have a mobile version of their website? That's the tricky one. Have you ever purchased anything from woot.com? Have you ever sold anything online? This could be Etsy or eBay, Craigslist. Do you have a blog that you've posted to in the last month? Do you use an RSS feed reader? Okay, so how many of you guys got 5 of those? You're technical savvy to a 5. Okay, what about 8? How many 8s are still with us? All right, now keep this answer in your head. How many of you guys, if you'd taken this test 5 years ago, would have been much lower than you are today? All of us, myself included. So the big question is, as we're looking at this the social media buzz and, are you tweeting, do you use Facebook, blah, 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 and all the dialogues that go on inside of our churches, why does it even matter? And I have to tell you, the answer to that question is in the questions I just asked you and the differences in your answers. It matters because the world is changing. A few years into my career, I realized that nothing I'd been taught worked. I started off in radio and cable television advertising. My dad worked for the Fort Worth Star-Telegram for 40 years and told me that newspapers were dying 20 years before it ever hit the presses. So I knew when I hit my career and nothing that I was taught worked, that the world was changing, but I had no language to articulate this, none at all. I knew the world was changing. I talked to other people who knew the world was changing, but I couldn't explain how it was changing. And then I ran across this book by Rex Miller. It's called The Millennium Matrix. And Rex does this amazing job. And here's the main point of the book. And we're going to walk through it in about 5 minutes. We'll go through the whole book. Yeah. When the way people communicate changes, the way people think changes, and then culture changes. I feel like I have to say that again, because it's such a profound, this is the whole of why social media matters. When the way people communicate changes, the way people think changes, and then culture changes. So let's walk a little bit through his book. And I'm finding it very awkward just to leave this on the table, so. Like I was instructed to do so none of the cords would fall out, right? We started off life in an oral culture. Now, none of us are from an oral culture, but you can kind of see vestiges of this in primitive societies. Life moved at 3 miles per hour. How many of you guys wish we were in a world that moved at 3 miles per hour sometimes? You lived in community. So if I'm telling you a story and you know that I'm the big fishtail guy and I'm going to exaggerate everything, you know to scale everything back I'm saying by about, maybe 30% or more. You know me, you know my parents, you know my history. We live in community together. Communication in an oral culture is face-to-face and one-on-one. And people tell stories. There's no television. People talk, sit around the campfire, hang out at the end of the day, and tell stories. Our churches told stories. If you look at the big Orthodox cathedrals and the big Catholic cathedrals that were built, they're built to tell a story. In the Orthodox, up on the dome, there's beautiful pictures of the Bible stories. Because this is the way we communicated. There's art. So fast forward, and what happens in 1455? In 1455, Gutenberg comes along with a printing press. And the world absolutely changes. We have a Reformation. 200 years of revolution in governments. And we enter this print culture. Whereas an oral world had covenants, the print world has contracts. It's all about the words. Our churches change. We start building shoebox boxes with a single aisle. And where does that single aisle lead to? The Word of God is open in front of us. And for the first time, I can hold the Word of God in my hand. I don't have to go through anybody else to tell it to me or interpret it to me or paint it on a wall. I can hold the Word of God and I can read it for myself. And you know what? The message can travel beyond the messenger. So you have people writing these amazing things, and they start changing the world with their ideas. So what happens in 1950? The television comes along, and it hits critical mass. And you start having televisions in every home. And we enter a broadcast culture. Now, all of a sudden, it's really important how I look. We start talking visually. We start processing in sort of a flood of images. And again, culture starts to change. People can see war. They're not just reading about it. And there's protesters. And when Dr. Martin Luther King does his march, people see it all over the world, way beyond the people who are in DC. And the world starts to change. And you know what happens in a broadcast world? Our churches change. They become much more visual. One of the reasons that we have all of this amazing technology all around us is because we're talking to a broadcast culture. And we have to talk visually, and we have to talk in presentation so that they can process it. Okay, so 1992, Netscape comes along. And we've already established that in the last 5 years, all of us have experienced this world change. So now in all of our church conversations and all of the leadership, we're asking now what? Because what matters isn't what platform you use. What matters is what's going to happen next. The biggest change, and this is a change that you guys are living, is that the way things get done is changing. So when I was a little girl, I wanted to grow up and be a novelist. And what I learned when I grew up was that if I wanted to do that, I had to go to all the work to write a book. And then I had to get past the secretary or admin who handles the slush pile to actually get read by an editor. And then if the people at the top decided to buy my book, then it would go into production. But then there's another layer of decisions because somebody has to actually produce it. And stores have to decide to buy it. So it's got to be shipped and get there. All of this huge process before I can ever get to that last person that I would like to have read my book that I wrote it for. I see Will Mancini sitting in the audience. He's written a book. And so how you actually get to that process of getting it to the person. Now I blog. There is a click between me and the person that I want to speak to. There's none of this stuff. And so you start having these amazing shifts and changes, such as, and again, you've experienced this. When you went to the amusement park as a kid, and all of your adventurous roller coaster friends wanted to go off and ride the roller coaster, but maybe you're a little timid and you wanted to go to the Spelunker Cave. I'm not saying which group I was in, but what did you do? You had to make a plan to meet back. So at 3 o'clock, we're going to meet at this, at the fountain or wherever. We'll meet back. What do you do now? Now you just run off. You just run off and you call each other on your cell phone and you hook back up later. If you make plans to meet with people at a restaurant and you go there and the line is out the door, that's the plan, but the plan can change at a moment's notice. You call your friends, they don't even get to the restaurant yet, you meet somewhere else. And you can see, if you look at the broadcast world and you look at the digital world, we can start making predictions about how things are gonna change. So the broadcast world is linear. It's like a script. There's a beginning, a middle, and an end. In the digital world, it's non-linear. Two people can go to the same website and take completely different paths. Scale matters. Think ratings. It's really important what you put on that broadcast show because you've got to draw the maximum amount of people. In the digital world, what matters? Speed matters. Broadcast, same time, same channel. How many of you guys thought same bat time, same bat channel? When is the last time you sat down to watch a television show and you had to hurry and get home so you could be there at the time it starts? You don't. If you miss it, you pick it up on your DVR or online. Quality was a big thing. You had fully equipped studios. And then now what? It's accessibility on YouTube. You can take the video with your phone. And it's more important to us that it be accessible to a bunch of people and for people to be able to put it out there than the quality that it's done with. Command and control. Producer, director, there's a clear hierarchy. What's the digital world? It's open source. Anybody can contribute. It's a whole different model. In broadcast world, you watch what others produce. But in a digital world, you can customize, you can hack it, you can modify it. You can make it whatever you want it to be. Okay, and here's where it's going to impact churches. Which model are our churches right now the closest to? Right now, we're working in a broadcast model, but we're seeing these signs of a digital model and what's coming. In 2008, largest segment of the US workforce is baby boomers. Guess what's going to happen in 2018? The largest segment are going to be those who were raised in a digital world. In 2016, the last millennial reaches voting age. So this is a huge, huge cultural shift that's coming. We as the church have to figure it out. And you know what? We've done it before. We did it when we moved from an oral culture to a print culture. We did it when we went from print to broadcast, and we're going to do it again. It's amazing to me how many Christians are on Twitter. Why? Because the mission of the church is to connect and communicate. What does Twitter do? It connects and communicates. All right, so you know it's important. How do you know which platforms to use? And you know, I was talking with Mark McDonald the other night, who's actually doing the next session, which will be the extension of this at 4 o'clock. So he'll take the conversation where I leave it off and take it way, way further. But we were talking about how social media is a tool. What feels huge about it is this big culture change. But in the end, social media is just a tool. So you've got Twitter, and you've got Facebook, and you've got Flickr, and so how do you know which tools you even want to jump into? Pretty much the tools break down into about 4 big groups. So you've got your blogs and your microblogs, you've got your social networking sites, you've got video and photo sharing, and you've got reviews and ratings. And yeah, there's some that blur those lines, but if you're looking at some categorization, that's pretty much what you're looking at. So we'll do a quick walkthrough of how the tools work. If you're blogging or microblogging, you're posting content. And usually it's words, but sometimes it's pictures. And the cool thing about it is you post it, you put it out there, people can feedback on it. If you're working with a microblog, you're limited to what you can do in a text. So that'd be sites like Twitter. Or your Facebook status is a limited amount of text that you're putting up. You can use blogging platforms to create a website. If you've got micro ministries in your church, like say you've got the youth ministry and they want their own website, have them set up a blog. It's fast, it's easy, you don't have to pay anybody to do it, and anybody can edit it from anywhere with a browser as long as they have permission. Users can subscribe. I mean, this is a big shift in the digital world, is the idea of permission marketing. Yes, we all hate spam. You hate those thousands of emails you get that you didn't ask for. In the digital world, I can opt in and subscribe. Social networks are, again, you're posting content, but you set up a profile, and it's all profile-based. So at its least, you go on, you put a picture of yourself up, you write a little bit of information, and then you decide who else's profiles you want in your network, and you see everything they post, they see everything you post, you can dialogue together. What's cool is, one of the things the digital world does that we can't do in a physical world is that all of a sudden, things that are connected become uncovered. I had a friend I went to high school with just message me the other day and say, I just realized we're related. My wife is married to your cousin. Again, because you can see where connections come in. And in the real world, we never would have known that about each other. Video and photo sharing. Again, you have profiles, but people don't go to video and photo sharing sites typically to look at your profile. What they're looking for is content. So if I want to have a photo about dolphins, I may wind up on Flickr searching. I'm not necessarily going to look for the photographer that took the picture of the dolphins. And reviews and ratings. So this is the ultimate in the power to the people. I was talking with Michael Trent the other day, who had a bad experience on his airline, and you know what? He tweeted about it. Now it's up to the airline whether or not they want to engage their customer base or not. It's great. You can use it in a very positive fashion. I happened to fly Virgin Airlines when I was out, and it was a great, surprising experience. And so I tweeted it, and because they're pretty digital world, they immediately responded to me. There's different strategies. So maybe you're using social media personally, What I want to zoom the conversation in on is how you use it as an organization. It's a very, very different matter. But you have to think of your church or not-for-profit as a personality. So all of a sudden, what picture are you going to put up that's going to capture the heart of your organization as you're developing your profile? What 3 sentences are you going to use to explain who you are and what it is that you're all about? It's very important, and those are discussions that as a church, you have to know who you are and what it is that you want to accomplish. All right, which brings us to, actually I was talking with Aaron Amador earlier this morning about, how do you get it done? You know, maybe you have your site set up. How do you actually get this done with the people in your organization? Who handles your social media? And it's easier if you can break it down into some components, because one person cannot handle it all. I don't care if you're a church, if you're the smallest church possible, your pastor cannot field all the social media. You're going to have some other people help with this. So let's look at the church in the digital world. Basically, you're working with a couple of different components. You're working with content. So this is, what is it that you're going to produce and post out into the world that people would actually tune into your channel to see? Time. If you leave this session and you get way excited about social media and you go and tweet 23 times in the next hour and then you don't do it again for 2 months, it's not going to be effective at all. Response. None of us would ever open a business, put in a phone, and then never answer it. You just wouldn't do it. You can't put social media out there without some kind of a plan on how you're going to respond to the people who engage with you. Okay, so brainstorm. Let's take this personal. Think about your own church and your own church context. Who on your team would excel at content production? Who are your writers? Who are your artists? Who are your musicians? Who are your videographers? Who are your photographers? Who in your world is going to be great at content production? Because these may not be the same people that end up posting it. Again, you're looking at that idea of the people who respond, the people who post, and the people who create don't have to be all the same team. It takes different skill sets to do all of that when you're doing this for an organization. And the next thing to think of is, that's new content. What does your church already produce that's of value that would be of low cost to share with people? Last time I spoke at WFX, I met a man from North Carolina. And something I didn't know is that in North Carolina, barbecue is a sport. His church is way into barbecue. They go to barbecue festivals. They have contests. They share recipes. They have all of this in hand right now where they can take this out and share it with the world. So think for a minute about, again, beyond, if you post, a lot of churches, this is not bad, by the way, but a lot of churches, their pastor has a blog and they're podcasting or they're posting videos. That's great stuff, but you guys have more to offer beyond that may reach a larger audience. Okay, so here's a little illustration of something that's highly unusual that had value. This is the 1969 photo directory from Southcliff Baptist Church in Fort Worth. That's the church I grew up in. This was sitting in the bottom of a closet in Karen Clary's closet. I don't actually know Karen Clary, but she scanned it all and posted it to, I had set up a couple of groups, Southcliff Youth, the 80s edition, and Southcliff Youth, the 70s edition, so that people could connect. So Karen scans this thing and puts it in, and the reason I see it at all is because this photo of the lovely woman in the beehive hairdo on row 2, item 3, that little girl there is one of my best friends, Lynette Wilson. Lynette grew up with me on Mean Drive. And so when Karen Clary, who knows Lynette, tagged Lynette, it showed up in my news stream as something happening with Lynette. So, of course, I thought this was hilarious. Look at these people. And started looking through the pages she'd posted, and I find third row, first photo is Gail and Gary Wood. Now, Gary passed away not too long when this was posted, and I knew that his daughters, who didn't happen to be on Facebook, would find this photo valuable. So I emailed it to them. And the next day, I got an email from Angela, his daughter, and she said, "You would have no way to know this, but you sent that to me on my father's birthday. And I cannot tell you how amazing it was for me after thinking about him all day to look in my inbox and find that." The digital world opens up possibilities that aren't readily apparent. Okay, so we already talked about how you might want to go beyond just doing sermon podcasts and just having your pastor or somebody on your staff have a blog. So how can you get the most of social media? How can you reach wider audiences, again, with stuff that you have people on your team who can produce the content and people who can post it, and you may have stuff that you already own in-house that you can post pretty much for free. All right, I need to say before we jump into this next part, there's two approaches. One is broadcast, where you just put stuff out there in the world. And you know what? That's not bad, because again, those connections are being made, and sometimes you'll put stuff out in the world, and it was completely unexpected what happens with that. But the better strategy, the stronger strategy, is when you post things with a method of engagement. Because social media has this bidirectional capacity, if you put things out there and you can engage with people, it's much stronger. So just keep that in mind. Neither one's a bad way to go, but you have both options. All right, so 10 ideas beyond sermon, podcasts, and videos. This is the discovernorthdallas.com website. Now, the way that this came to be is that my church, Crosspoint Community Church in Carrollton, Texas, we had land and we were going to build a church, but if you look at Carrollton, there's a church building on every corner. So as we started thinking a little more missionally, a little more strategically, we went, the last thing Carrollton, Texas needs is another church building. So what could we do that was really community-centric? And we took that money, we sold the land, got rid of it, we moved into a strip mall and built a theater that's used by over 200 groups a month, I think, at low cost. So you've got people doing concerts, you've got community events, you've got different groups meeting, you've got community theater. All of these people using this small, intimate kind of black box theater for, again, pretty low cost unless it's a commercial venture. So we needed a way, we could have the theater166.com website, but we needed another way to get stuff out there, and it's not enough just for us to have our Facebook page and post the events. So I rounded up some of my blogging friends. We started this whole discovernorthdallas.com, and all these different bloggers contribute to post about restaurants and stores and things to do with your dog and day trips. And it also gives an outlet for Theater 166, the church, to promote, in rotation. If we flood it, then it's no longer discovernorthdallas.com, right? It's Discover Theater 166. By the way, the name of it, there's 168 hours in a week. The church uses it for 2 of those hours. That's how it got to be Theater 166. I wrote an article for Worship Facilities Magazine a couple of years ago and just started interviewing to find out what churches are really doing in social media, and I ran across the Church of the Beloved. They're in Seattle, and they have an awful lot of musicians and singer-songwriters as part of their congregation. The singer-songwriters got together, put together a worship album, which they give away for free using a social media platform called I Like. And it's a great way for musicians to post their stuff. And I thought it was really incredible that the church went into this project with the idea of giving it away to the world. LinkedIn. You'll notice that this page was created in 2009. That's when Dallas just tanked when it came to jobs. And there were so many people out of work. If you were to poll just about any congregation in this area, that was the biggest need, is people needed employment. So because of the power of social media to uncover connections that you wouldn't know in the physical world, the First Baptist Church of Louisville set up this group. It's for members only. And because LinkedIn is based on your professional profile, it's pretty ubiquitous. If you do have a LinkedIn profile and anybody Googles you, it's typically one of the first pages that comes up is your LinkedIn profile because it's so everywhere now. So basically, They created this group where people in their church have their professional world, and a lot of them had been laid off, and they could go and look and see what people did and what types of people were available just by searching in this group. It was a powerful tool, and it met real needs immediately. And you know how long it takes to set up a group on LinkedIn? About 10 minutes. They promoted it in the announcements, and people joined. Okay, so my husband and I decided we were going to make sushi. And so we went online because, you can't just read a cookbook on how to make sushi. There's a whole art to rolling the rolls and making it all. If you live in North Dallas, eating sushi is a life skill. So we decided we'd learn how to make it. And so we went online, and the deal is, you have probably video equipment in your church, and you have talented people in your church. What kind of how-to videos could you create just based on the skills? Do you have women in your church who crochet? You could become the channel that people go to for any kind of skill set because you have the video equipment and you can do it at a higher quality than a flip phone. So again, using YouTube, Vimeo, any of the social media platforms to create a channel for your church that becomes the go-to place to find out how to do just about anything. All right, Meetup is a social platform that's based on physically getting people together face-to-face. And one of the most, I guess, marginalized groups, again, we've been through a ton of layoffs. There's a lot of stay-at-home dads in Dallas right now. And they don't have a network. They're not like the moms. They don't all get together. They just sort of stay in their homes with the kids and don't have a real place to connect. So on Meetup, this is because, this guy started a group. He got 30 guys together. I pulled this screenshot a couple of years ago, so who knows how many it has now, to get stay-at-home dads together face-to-face as sort of their own support group. What groups do you already have in your church that you could publicize via Meetup? You could create this and reach people that are never going to go to your website, that are never going to see the announcements that scroll on a Sunday morning. What are you doing that has an appeal that you can take outside the walls of your church using the social platform of Meetup? Oh, I love this one. Okay, so when the Mars Phoenix was going around, it tweeted, right? NASA tweeted what was going on and all the exciting things that happened. After I gave this talk at one, I think it was at WFX, a guy came up to me afterwards and said, my 70-year-old mom is on Twitter so she can follow what the youth group is doing in Costa Rica. What really exciting missional things are happening that you can tweet in real time, and people who can't go can get excited and follow on Twitter. And you don't have to have a Twitter account to follow. All you have to do is text follow at whatever the handle is of what you're following to 40404. And you get the tweets. My go-to place on Twitter happens to be WFA weather. Because in the morning I look and there's a tweet on my phone that came to me as a text message that tells me whether or not I need an umbrella and how hot it's going to be. Okay, I did turn them off when it was 105 for like 100 days in a row. It was like, yeah, no need for that. Flickr. This picture right here was taken in, I'm going to pronounce it wrong, Oaxaca, Mexico, where a team went to go, they were building stoves for families. So basically, they arranged the masonry, they put in these stoves so that people could bake, and did a lot of other just real social justice and missional things. The person who went on it, who is an amateur photographer, took these amazing pictures. And all of a sudden, these photos of people who are interested in the area, or quite frankly, can search for this by any of the many tags that he's put on it, can hear this story. And in many ways, the visual story can be much more powerful than the 300 words that you might blog about it. So by leveraging Flickr or Picasa or any of the other photo platforms, you can take the story way beyond it's going to reach, way beyond your congregation. Yelp. Okay, I pulled this last night. This is Watermark Community Church, who you may be going to the tour tonight. They put a place page on Yelp. Why? Because Yelp is a site where people go to find out where restaurants are, whatever they're looking for. If they're looking for churches, they type in church. It tells them, it locates them and tells them where what's around them. So it's a great place, especially if you're traveling to another city or just in your own community, where you can find out what to do. Now, here's the deal with Yelp. It's a review and rating site. So you can set up your place page, or quite frankly, anybody who's been to your church can set up a place page for you. And people can rate you. If you don't have anybody who's active on Yelp, who's contributing to your page and saying that they think you're amazing, you may get like the one guy who has a really bad experience because he comes on a day that rains, he has to park way back in the back, and then maybe he missed a greeter, or whatever. So in a digital world, you cannot control what people say about you. It'd be like if somebody took a picture for me right now, maybe they're not standing at my good angle, or I'm talking, I'm kind of like that. Like if you're watching online, you happen to have really slow bandwidth and I get stuck in this face, you're stuck with that for a while. People can take bad pictures. I mean, we all know that. We've all seen pictures of ourselves where we're like, oh, you kind of cringe. If that's the only impression somebody sees of me, if all they ever see is this one picture, that's what they're going to think of me. They're going to think I look like this, right? But people who know me, who've spent time with me, they've seen a lot of different movements of my face, okay? And so they have a very different impression of me. The way you're going to manage social media, and quite frankly, negative social media, one, you need to have a plan of what you're going to do to engage it. Because you're going to have to, again, remember, you got to respond. We're not just not answering the phone. So you got to coach whoever is on your response team on how to engage it. And the other is, if there's 2 bad ratings and 20 great ones, what's the overall picture? It's a pretty good picture. So again, you can't control it. Don't waste sleep over the bad ones. Engage it, deal with it. Sometimes if you get a lot of bad reviews, it may reveal a problem that, again, the digital world reveals things that we would never see in the physical world. You're going to get real-time feedback from real people. So anyway, go on Yelp. The other one, Mark McDonald, who's doing the session at 4, also let me know that Google finally released their business pages. So now you can go into Google Plus and you can set up your place page or your business page, which you should probably do for your church. Again, starting back where we started the conversation, you got to think of your organization as a person. What's the picture that defines you? And maybe it's your logo. And what are the 2 to 3 sentences that you need to say about yourself? If you happen to be doing group blogging, one of the very best platforms for this, hands down, is Posterous. And the reason Posterous is so amazing is you can have no technical skill whatsoever and use Posterous. So all you do is put in the email addresses for the people that you want to have contribute. This is how easy it is. They got to be able to email. That's sort of a threshold and a given. So you take an email, the subject line becomes the title of your post. Whatever you write in the body becomes the text, and you can attach whatever you want to it. You can attach a video, you can attach an MP3, you can attach 1 photo, you can attach 10 photos. And it takes it and it posts it to your blog. You just post to post@posterous.com. And once you've signed up, you've told it that anything sent from that email address needs to go to this blog. And it figures it all out. So if you've got a lot of different people that you want to have contribute, make it super easy for them. You don't want to have them have to go through 10 steps because they'll mess it up. I know, because I've messed it up on churchproduction.com. I figured it out now, it's better. Prezi. Prezi is this is the presentation software I'm using right now. So if you're wondering how we did all the cool zoom in, zoom out, that's on Prezi. It's free. It's absolutely wonderful. But once you do a presentation, you can make it public, tag it with, label it with whatever tags you want to find it. Is, when we get off here, I'll go take it public and put, church in the digital world and social media and, whatever kind of tags might be appropriate. And then anybody who goes on Prezi looking for a presentation can search for it and find it. What kind of big concepts are you passionate about as a church that you want to communicate to people that you could potentially do on Prezi? Just a few words. It's fairly easy to learn. It's pretty intuitive in how you lay things out. You type things in, you insert pictures, and then you just kind of path it with, you hook on you're just laying it out on this big, here's what my whole presentation right here looks like in Prezi. So basically you just lay it out on this big white screen, and then you zoom into different pieces of it, setting out a path. Okay, some advice from Seth Godin, and I love his blog. If you don't track it, it's a good one to add to your RSS reader. One key element of a successful artist: ship. Get it out the door, make things happen. The other, fail. Fail often. Dream big and don't make it. Not every time anyway. You know what? A lot of people don't do social media because they're afraid. They're afraid they're going to mess it up. And you know what? Get over it, because yes, you're going to mess it up. You're going to post something that's going to make somebody unhappy. Or like in my case, I accidentally put out a photo that wasn't for release yet and just had to yank it back off. You're going to make some mistakes along the way because there is no playbook for this. This is new. Think about the difference in your life from now and from 5 years before. You're going to mess it up. You know what? So what? The beauty of a digital world is that you can go online and fix it. You know, people have talked about, the whole Encyclopedia Britannica, Wikipedia thing. The deal with Wikipedia is, when they actually did an analysis, there were 5 mistakes per article in Wikipedia. There were 4 mistakes per article in Encyclopedia Britannica. Which ones have been fixed? It's the ones in a digital world. So, now this is the part where we become bidirectional, right? Oh, they told me not to turn it sideways. So what questions do you have? Yes?
How do you deal with some security issues in terms of, for example, we have a really great children's camp. We want to do something about the children's camp. We put a video out there. Oops, we've got kids that may or may not, those images really aren't supposed to be out there. How do you deal with that kind of?
Absolutely. So the question that was asked is, how do you deal with the security issues, especially when it comes to children? Guys, the security issues with social media are real. There's no way to control this. There's no way to lock it down. If you happen to be posting things to Facebook, if you have a Facebook page, you can mark it so that only people who are in your circle are private. But when it comes to kids and photos, it's a very real thing. And different churches handle it different ways. You can make sure that you've got, all the permission slips signed off on, but then how do you know? Then you've got to do your due diligence on the back end and really coordinate with, excuse me, with, this child is in this picture and we can't use that picture, and you've got to really do your due diligence. So, the threats are real. One of the interesting things, though, is that there's a very good chance that the millennials are not going to think about privacy the same way that we think about privacy. I mean, I look at the way I live my life and the way my daughter lives her life. We see it completely differently. Things that I feel like are personal, it's out there to the world, and it doesn't matter to them. It's okay. It's like you live in this giant, global, small town where everybody knows what you're doing. Did I answer your question? Anything else? Okay.
So, with our church, we try to, we've done the broadcasting type thing in Facebook where we just put stuff out there. We've been trying to put more questions about trying to get people to respond. And, we haven't really gotten there. I follow, Engine Radio on Facebook, some of the Christian stations. One day they put on a thing about, what are you drinking for lunch today? And, they had 100 posts, and people say, oh, I'm so, whatever. We're asking, questions on, how do you feel about whatever we just did? And people aren't responding. How do you build, a culture of getting those responses?
Okay, so the question is, what if you do want to come up with engagement strategies and nobody answers? You got crickets. You post a really thought-provoking question, or you ask people to give video feedback and nothing. The deal is, until this is actually part of your culture, because, realize we're really heavily invested in a broadcast culture. Everything in our church works broadcast, for the most part. And so it's, it's pretty much, it's like this presentation right here. It's me talking out to you. There's not a lot of chance for feedback. So to build that culture, you're going to have to manufacture it in the beginning, and you're going to have to seed it. So, for example, say you ask a question, hit up a couple of people, and as it's going to be proportional to how large your church is, but try to get some mass behind responding, and then people become less shy. A lot of people aren't used to putting themselves out there. Or, sometimes you'll have people where it's the same people over and over. So you really have to do sort of the back end until that culture is developed. Anyone else?
Do you recommend deciding on a specific strategy for social media? For example, using a certain set of sites that like for Yelp, for example. There are several sites like Yelp. Do you think to set yourself up across all of those, and then taking the chance that you don't keep those updated, or you choose one set strategy, say this is the way we advertise?
Okay, so the question is, would you go to all the review and rating sites and post to those? Basically, are you going to scattergun or are you going to be targeted? Is that a fair way to assess it in the platforms and the strategies you choose? You can't have more than you're able to produce content for. I mean, there's some great tools. There's some aggregators like Hootsuite where you can post once and it goes to multiple places, and that might make it easy for you to post. But again, you got to do the response. So maybe, trying to figure out what's big in your area. So maybe Yelp is not even on your radar. Maybe everybody just uses Google Places wherever you're at. Try to identify I guess maybe if you're going to break it down, one, what can you support? What can you produce enough content for? Respond pretty much in real time if you can, and then then kind of take it out from there. So you might want to be targeted, or if you've got the bandwidth to support them all, and again, you can adjust your strategy as you go. You can do real-time corrections. So let's say you invest 6 months into Yelp and you got nothing. So back off Yelp. Do something else. Really, there might be, but I'm just saying when I go on and look, I just look and see, kind of what's in your area code. If there's in Yelp, you can type in your area code. Same thing with Google Places, you can type in your area code and kind of search for a few different things and see what pops up. Are there a lot of churches on it maybe? Are there a lot of users? So just trying to do a little bit of your own research. That way, you can also, you guys, there's a ton of great blogs written by people who are way smarter and much more experienced than I am, where you can find this stuff out, and it doesn't take a lot of digging to get there. I feel like I should check and see how we're doing on time. Okay, so we got about 5 more minutes. Is there anything else? If you leave with one thought, it's to try this. You don't have to do everything all at once. Just pick a platform and test drive it with the best that your church has to offer and see what kind of engagement you get and see what happens. And you know what? For some churches, your culture's not there yet. And so it may not be a raving success. But the thing about the digital world is it really is much more a little bit looped back to the oral culture and a little more one-to-one, and you still may create engagements that matter. Again, 4 o'clock, Mark McDonald will be speaking, and I'll take this conversation way deep. Thanks.